The price of silence. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft shadows across the marble floor of a house that was never truly a home. Ayesha sat quietly at the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap, as silence pressed heavy against her chest. She had long learned that silence was her only defense in a house where every word could be weaponized. Her marriage to Hassan had been arranged when she was 20, an alliance of convenience wrapped in tradition. At first, she'd harbored hope, even love. But as the months passed without the sound of a child's cry, the walls of the household began to shift. Farah, her mother-in-law, once mildly indifferent, turned icy. Every gaze was laced with disappointment. Every word carried the sharp edge of accusation. "You eat, you sleep, and still you can't give us a child," Farah would mutter loud enough for the servants to hear. "What use is a daughter-in-law who can't bear heirs?" Hassan, her husband, said little. He stopped defending her by the second year. And by the third, he stopped speaking altogether. He returned home late, avoided eye contact, and took to sleeping in the guest room. Ayesha knew of the woman, the one he whispered to on the phone when he thought she was asleep. She even found the hidden scent of unfamiliar perfume on his clothes once, but said nothing. Infertility wasn't an illness in this house. It was a curse, a flaw so shameful that it erased all other virtues. No one spoke of tests or treatments. The blame was hers, fixed, eternal. Then came the day that would sever her ties to the only life she had known. Farah summoned her with a brittle smile. "We found a place for you," she said, as though Ayesha were a stray cat being rehomed. "A peaceful retreat in the countryside. A place to rest, away from this stress. A change might help you conceive." She packed her modest belongings in silence. There were no hugs, no goodbyes. Hassan didn't even come downstairs. A car waited at the gate. Farah handed the driver a small envelope, then turned away without a word. The journey was long, and the sky darkened as they drove past rice fields and crumbling mosques. The car stopped at a dusty roadside station hours later. "This is where you get off," the driver muttered. Bewildered, Ayesha stepped out. Her suitcase landed beside her with a thud. The car sped off, its tail lights swallowed by dusk. There was no retreat, no one waiting, just a half-lit tea stall, a broken bench, and a distant echo of crickets. She stood there, motionless, as the weight of understanding sank into her bones. She had been discarded, sold, not in the brutal, open way of old, but in the quiet cruelty that came with tradition cloaked as duty. She realized Farah had accepted a bribe. Some distant family, likely needing a caretaker or servant, had offered money in return for a woman with no one to claim her. No womb, no worth, no resistance. Rain began to fall, slow and steady, soaking through her shawl. Ayesha sat down on the bench, cradling her suitcase, shivering not from the cold but from the hollow pit spreading in her chest. No phone, no cash, no identity, only the bitter taste of betrayal and the echo of a life that never truly belonged to her. And yet, in that stillness, she felt the strangest thing: relief. There were no more eyes watching her womb, no voices reminding her of her failure, no locked doors or silent dinners. Just rain, and freedom wrapped in uncertainty. The tea vendor gave her a curious glance but said nothing. She nodded at him, politely, and turned her eyes to the road. Every vehicle that passed cast brief light on her face, revealing a woman stripped of everything, yet strangely weightless. In that moment, a quiet vow formed in her mind. "If I am to be lost, let me choose where I land." She did not cry. She simply waited. For what? She didn't yet know. But something, or someone, was coming. The man with two shadows. The storm had settled by morning. The scent of wet earth hung heavy in the air, and the sky was painted in soft gray. Ayesha sat stiffly on the wooden bench where she had dozed, her head resting on her bundled shawl. Her eyes opened slowly to the distant rumble of an approaching vehicle, a rusted white pickup, its engine tired and wheezing. It came to a halt near the tea stall. From behind the wheel stepped a tall man in his early 30s. His beard was thick, his eyes weathered but kind. He wore grease-streaked overalls, his hands calloused, his posture upright. He was not the kind of man who blended into the background, yet he moved with an unspoken humility. Two tiny figures clambered out of the truck's backseat, a pair of twin girls in mismatched sweaters, one clutching a teddy bear, the other munching on roasted peanuts. The man caught sight of Ayesha almost instantly. She didn't look away. She had nothing left to protect, no pride, no pretense. Just exhaustion. He walked toward her slowly. "You waiting for someone?" he asked gently. Ayesha hesitated. Her voice, unused, rasped. "No, you've been here all night." She nodded. He looked her over, not with suspicion, but with concern. "I'm Zeeshan, mechanic, live in the next village over." She glanced at the girls, who were now playing with sticks and humming to themselves. He followed her gaze and smiled faintly. "Amal and Ariba, my twin hurricanes." Ayesha's eyes softened, though she said nothing. "I don't mean to intrude," Zeeshan continued, "but a woman alone at a roadside bench, it's not safe out here." A pause. Then, carefully, "If you've nowhere to go, you're welcome to rest at my place. I've got a small house. Clean. My mother passed last year, and I've been managing the girls alone. Been needing help, actually." Ayesha flinched at the mention of help. It sounded familiar, like the arrangement her mother-in-law had made behind her back. But Zeeshan's tone lacked that cold transaction. He wasn't offering a cage, just shelter. "I'm not looking for charity," she said quietly. Zeeshan shook his head. "Not charity. A fair exchange. You help watch the girls while I'm at the garage. I'll give you a clean room, warm food, and safety. That's all." The wind picked up. Amal ran over and pointed at Ayesha's scarf. "Are you cold, Auntie?" Ayesha looked down at the child, who offered her the teddy bear. She blinked back a sudden tear. "Just a little," she whispered. Zeeshan lifted her suitcase into the truck without another word. "Come if you like. I'll stay. Your choice." For the first time in years, she had a choice. His home was modest, a one-story structure with peeling paint and a small vegetable patch in the back. The living room was cluttered with toys, half-folded laundry, and oil-stained tools. Yet it felt alive, lived in, honest. Ayesha was given the spare room, a mattress, and a shelf. She unpacked slowly, listening to the sounds of Zeeshan cooking eggs while the girls bickered over coloring books. The next day passed in quiet tasks, washing dishes, folding clothes, boiling lentils. The girls orbited around her like she was the sun itself, their laughter echoing down the hallway. By evening, Ariba had braided Ayesha's hair, and Amal was calling her Baji. Zeeshan kept his distance. He was polite, careful. He never asked questions. He never stayed too long. He simply existed beside her, allowing her to breathe. At dinner, she finally asked their mother. He didn't flinch. "Lost her to pneumonia 3 winters ago. She was quiet, kind, like you." Ayesha looked down, heart aching. "I can't have children." Zeeshan glanced up from his plate. "So?" She blinked. "That doesn't bother you." "Why should it?" he replied. "You're not here to give birth. You're here to be safe. That's all." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was warm, respectful. That night, as the twins slept curled on a mattress beside her room, Ayesha stared at the ceiling. She was still alone, still lost. But for the first time since her exile, she didn't feel invisible. She wasn't a mistake. She wasn't an embarrassment. She was just Ayesha. And he, in this quiet, oil-scented house full of mismatched crayons and gentle strangers, that was finally enough. Whispers of a new heart. Days became weeks, and Ayesha began to move through the small household like a melody, soft, steady, indispensable. She woke before the twins, swept the courtyard, boiled tea with cardamom, and stitched the girls' torn sleeves with quiet care. Her silence, once born of fear, now wrapped the home in calm. Zeeshan observed her from a distance. There was grace in the way she folded blankets, in how she instinctively touched the walls of the house as though trying to heal them. He never pried. He never needed to. Her sorrow was stitched into her every movement. The twins adored her. Ariba insisted Ayesha comb her hair before school. Amal demanded bedtime lullabies, even if Ayesha's voice broke at the high notes. When they laughed together, the house felt whole, like it had always been meant to hold the sound of a woman humming in the kitchen. One afternoon, while Zeeshan was repairing a generator outside, he overheard Ayesha telling the girls a story. Her voice was animated, full of color. She painted kingdoms in the sky, brave girls with silent hearts, and magic that bloomed from tears. The girls sat wide-eyed, their little hands clutching hairs. Zeeshan smiled to himself. She wasn't just a guest anymore. She was the warmth that the house had forgotten. Later that evening, after the girls had gone to sleep, Ayesha stepped onto the veranda with 2 cups of tea. Zeeshan looked up from his notes, surprised. "I thought you might need a break," she said, offering the cup. He accepted it with a quiet nod. They sat together in companionable silence, the stars above them humming with unspoken truths. "I used to think I had a purpose," Ayesha began, voice barely above a whisper. "That if I became a mother, everything would fall into place. That I'd be loved, respected, seen." Zeeshan didn't interrupt. "But when I couldn't," she paused, then exhaled. "They erased me, as if my entire being was tied to a womb that wouldn't listen." Zeeshan set his cup down gently. "You are not broken, Ayesha." She looked at him, startled. He continued, "You care like a mother. You protect like one. And those 2 little girls, they already see you as more than just a helper." "They call me Baji," she said softly. He smiled. "They'll call you whatever you let them. They don't need a title. They just need you." The wind stirred her dupatta, and for a moment, she looked fragile, almost translucent beneath the moonlight. But her voice held firm. "What about you?" she asked. "You lost someone. Doesn't it hurt to see another woman in your home?" Zeeshan thought for a long moment. "Yes, but not in the way you think. My wife was part of me, and her memory doesn't leave with your arrival. It just makes room. Life doesn't stop, Ayesha. It shifts." She nodded, absorbing his words. Something inside her loosened. The next day, as the girls played in the date, Ariba tripped and began to cry. Without thinking, Ayesha rushed to her, scooped her into her arms, and kissed her scraped knee. Amal, watching, said shyly, "Mema used to do that." Ayesha froze. Ariba, still sniffling, mumbled, "You smell like Mama too." Ayesha carried both girls inside, heart beating louder than her footsteps. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching Zeeshan sweep the front yard under the lantern's glow. Was she taking someone else's place? Was she betraying the memory of a woman she had never met? But then she remembered, no one had asked her to become anyone else. She had simply been welcomed. The following morning, Zeeshan handed her a letter written in a child's clumsy scrawl. It read, "Dear Auntie, we love you. If you want, you can be our Mima. We won't tell anyone." Her hands trembled. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Zeeshan approached her with quiet hesitation. "They wrote it themselves," he said, almost apologetically. "I didn't know until they gave it to me. I understand if it's too much." Ayesha looked at him, her eyes brimming but unafraid. "I'm not their mother," she said gently. "No," he agreed. "But you're something they don't want to lose." She looked down at the note again, the ink smudged by tiny fingers and hope. "I don't want to lose them either," she whispered. "The home I never chose, but always needed." The monsoon had returned, sweeping across the village in soft drizzles and distant thunder. Ayesha stood at the kitchen window, watching rainwater trace paths through the dust on the glass. Inside, the twins danced in puddles wearing mismatched raincoats, their giggles echoing down the hallway. Zeeshan leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, a rare smile on his face. "They haven't laughed this much in years," he murmured. Ayesha nodded, her fingers curled around a warm mug. "Children recover quickly. It's the grown-ups who carry the weight longer." He glanced at her, longer than usual, but said nothing. Their routine had grown unspoken, seamless. She packed the girls' school bags. He refilled the grain containers. She hemmed their clothes. He repaired their sandals. They didn't need labels or declarations. But something deeper pulsed beneath the quiet, a knowing, a longing neither dared to voice. until the past came knocking. One evening, as the twins played outside, a vehicle rumbled into the front lane, a black SUV, its tires crunching gravel with authority. A man stepped out, umbrella tucked beneath his arm, his designer shoes sinking slightly into the mud. Hassan. Ayesha's breath caught. He looked unchanged, arrogant, well-groomed, entitled. She stepped out onto the veranda just as Zeeshan emerged from the workshop, wiping grease from his hands. Ayesha, Hassan said, his voice flat, as if she had merely gone missing for a few hours. Get your things. We're going home. Zeeshan stiffened. Who are you? I'm her husband, Hassan replied, eyes never leaving Ayesha. This is none of your business. Ayesha didn't move. Her hands trembled, but her feet were steady. You sold me. Hassan scoffed. Don't be dramatic. It was temporary, a necessary decision. I was under pressure. You gave me away like a broken chair, she said, louder now. You let your mother trade me like cattle. And now that I've found peace, you come to reclaim ownership. Hassan's jaw clenched. You're still my wife. What you're doing, living with this man, it's shameful. Zeeshan stepped forward, calm but firm. What's your tone? This is between us, Hassan snapped. She belongs to me. No, Ayesha said, her voice steady now. I don't belong to anyone. The twins peeked out from the corridor, sensing the tension. Ariba clutched Ayesha's hand, whispering, Why is that man angry? Ayesha crouched and kissed the girl's forehead. Because he lost something he never valued. Hassan's eyes narrowed. You think this is love? You're playing house with an oil-stained widower and his orphans. Zeeshan took a deep breath. That oil built this roof. And those girls. They're my pride, not my shame. Ayesha stood taller, her hands no longer trembling. You left me empty. This home gave me back life. You can't take that away. Hassan looked between them, one last time, then turned and walked back to his car, tires spinning in the mud as he drove off, swallowed by the rain. The silence left in his wake wasn't heavy. It was cleansing. Later that night, the twins crawled into Ayesha's bed, their tiny arms wrapped around her waist. Zeeshan knocked gently on the open door. They are scared, Ayesha said softly. He nodded. They feel what you feel. She brushed hair from Amal's eyes. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Zeeshan stepped inside, kneeling beside the bed. There's no perfect answer, Ayesha. But this, he gestured to the girls, to the room, to the life they were building. This feels right. Her eyes shimmered. I was never allowed to choose. Not until now. He hesitated, then reached for her hand. Then choose us. Not out of obligation, but out of want. She didn't answer with words. Her fingers curled around his, gently, deliberately. The next morning, the girls presented a card scribbled in colorful crayons. We love you, Mima. Please don't leave. Ayesha smiled, tears quietly sliding down her cheeks. She hugged them tightly and whispered, I'm not going anywhere. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. Inside, the storm had finally passed.